Hey guys, welcome. This is Brad Krantz. Thanks for joining me on my Monday morning leadership. Today, I'm going to provide my own leadership perspective and I'm going to talk about questions as we approach the New Year's. And I'm not going to give necessarily definitive answers, but there's a number of questions that face us, particularly in the US, as we move into the new year. So I want to take some time just to discuss that and lay out some of the key issues here. We've got three areas I want to talk about is our political, then number two, economic, and then thirdly, social and cultural. On political, so what's happening in the political arena here in the US? And I could ask maybe a question, a leading question. Who's going to be president? Okay. We had an election recently. It's between Trump and Biden. It's the most contested I've ever seen in my entire life. It was nasty. There was no love lost between the two sides. There are some remaining concerns, obviously, about the election and the voting and results and the software used. I think there's some legitimate concerns there. A Biden presidency, what does that mean? Let's go back. I'm going to share some information here from Pew Research, and this was done about a month ago. But these questions that they brought up still remain. You know, there's deep divisions, obviously, in the views of the election process. Right? No surprise there. We're seeing it played out, and whether it will be clear who won. Again, here we are a month later, 2 weeks after the election. We're still waiting to see that. You know, it said at this time, half the registered voters expected to see the election results within a day or two of the election. Again, we're 2 weeks out on this, guys. So it's still there's some deep underlying divisions in our country. Now, a large majority of the voters say it is important to Americans to know who won the presidential election within a day or two of the election. Well, here we are again. We're 2 weeks out on this. It's not happening. Trump and Biden supporters obviously have deep disagreements over several other aspects of the election and voting process, including whether it will be clear which candidate won even after all the votes are counted. Again, this is still happening. 3/4 of registered voters who support Biden are confident the country will know the winner by the presidential election when all the votes are counted, including 30% who are very confident. Well, guess what? We're still debating that. And again, I think there are some issues on the whole voting process, how ballots were counted, and some of the other activities there. Trump and his advisors and his legal people are dealing with those. So much smaller majority of Trump voters, 55%, are confident that Americans will have a clear sense of who won, with just 13% saying they're very confident the winner will be clearly known after all the votes counted. Well, again, here we are 2 weeks out. There's no declared winner. The media, of course, is declaring Joe Biden the winner. We've got the Pew Research Center did this about a month or so ago, find that Trump and Biden supporters also have very different views, no surprise here, of the impact of the coronavirus outbreak on the safety of voting in the presidential election. Obviously, the continued fallout with safety regarding the coronavirus. And we're still seeing our state, our governor just issued new mandates for kind of curtailing limits on businesses and practices. That certainly is going to leak into the economic aspect. So, guys, we're dealing with a pretty volatile political situation here still in the U.S. I'm not so much concerned about a Biden presidency. I'll talk about this. The market favored Biden. I still think he will end up being the president of this country, despite all the clamor raised on the right. I voted for Trump, but I'll just come out and say I don't see that he's going to win in this situation. There's a lot of concerns, again, about the legitimacy, voting fraud, all this. Again, the courts are going to have to sift through that and decide. But again, the divisiveness in our politics in this country is very, very real. The next factor, economic. Okay, what's happening with the economy? Well, the market's at an all-time high. It's gone up from where it was, took a big dip in April with the coronavirus. We've still got unemployment figures. They peaked at about 14.7% here in April, I believe, according to the current Bureau of Labor Statistics. It's down to about 6.9%. And again, the stock market favored Biden to win. It looks like he will. But even though the GDP went up, quote unquote, by 33%, 60% of that is made up by the service sector. And the service sector of our economy has taken a huge hit. Until that returns, are we ever really going to see full economic recovery? And then, of course, we've got the world situation. If you're following what's going on in Africa, we have a very volatile political and economic situation there. Many people within countries of Africa, like Nigeria, Kenya, Uganda, that I'm familiar with, are really hit hard economic. They literally shut down their countries. They did not get economic payments from their government. So people there are really hurting, but there remains a high degree of volatility within the continent of Africa, both politically and economically. So Pew Research here, this is kind of some interesting stuff. This is about a month or two old. In the US and UK, globalization leaves some feeling left behind or swept up. So focus groups that were held both in the US and in Britain said people see common challenges to local and national identity. And then, not surprisingly, few in the US owned stocks outside of 401ks in 2019, and fewer said that the market had a big impact on their view of the economy. Well, if you don't own any stocks, you probably wouldn't, but what's not talked about, again, that's kind of been the go-to retirement plan for most people now is 401ks. 401ks were never intended to be retirement plans, and nothing in them is guaranteed. Before COVID-19, wages, job availability, and healthcare costs mattered more than the stock market in Americans' views of how the economy was doing. But that's only part of it. If that's not a complete picture, so I see a great deal of ignorance about what's really going on in our economy because people just aren't really participating, so they don't see all aspects of it. And again, this was as of September 25th. Economic fallout from COVID-19 continues to hit lower income Americans the hardest, going back to our unemployment statistics. Half the adults say they lost a job due to the coronavirus outbreak and they're still unemployed. There's a large sector of our economy, again, service sector, that's really been hit hard. And there are large numbers of jobs that are just not coming back. So it remains to be seen what is going to happen in our economy, even though the stock market looks favorable, I think more so with the Biden presidency in that. But there's still a fair amount of instability and unknowns coming up. But are we in a full recovery? No. And I think it's going to take a while for us to get back there. Third question here has to do with where are we socially and culturally? Guys, we saw social unrest to the largest degree that I can recall in my lifetime since the late 60s and early 70s with the Vietnam War unrest. But we had riots and looting in my city here, Seattle. We had Chaz, whatever you want to call it, sector that was taken over for several weeks. Minneapolis, of course, after the shooting of George Floyd, which again was a very sad incident. But we're seeing a high degree of social unrest, and then the political division that seems to be fueling that. And I would say no doubt COVID-19 was adding to this as well. And then I'll just say we have the Black Lives Matter. I'm not against racial equality whatsoever, but guys, what's BLM's influence going to be on the next administration? They sent Joe Biden a congratulatory letter, but basically with the bottom of it saying, what are you going to be doing for us? So it remains to be seen how much influence they will have. I've watched the videos of the founders of that. They are Marxist in their ideology. The U.S. is not based on Marxist ideology, theory, or practice. So it remains to be seen how much influence BLM will have on a Joe Biden presidency. But the U.S. definitely remains polarized despite all the rhetoric talking about empathy in this. There's still a high degree of social unrest, guys. Americans are divided on whether increased focus on race will lead to major policy change. Okay, more Black adults now say that the country has to work to address racial inequality. And again, I'm not against that. I'm all for that. While the views of white adults have remained largely unchanged since 2019. Okay, Americans are more positive about the long-term rise in U.S. racial ethnic diversity than in 2016. So we've seen a change there from the last election when Trump was elected to now. Support for Black Lives Matter, as I just mentioned, has decreased since June, but it remains strong among Black Americans. So how are these going to play out, guys? Where are we politically? What's happening in the economy, and where are we in our social and cultural? Those are questions I think that we still need to be paying attention to. There's no definitive answers at this point. I think only the proverbial time will tell. Just trying to provide some leadership perspective from my standpoint on issues the areas that I see are really impacting us at a country. as a country. I would certainly love to get your feedback on this, comments, thoughts, input on this. Please feel free to reach out, guys. I'd love to hear your thoughts on again, what's happening with us politically, where you see the economy headed. Maybe you see some other issues socially or culturally that are impacting us, and what can we do to change? How can we make things better is the bottom line here, guys. Leaders want to ask questions, but we want to ask them is we want to try to get answers. We want to find solutions to the problem. So my purpose in talking about this is to provide some leadership on these issues, acknowledge that there are problems in these arenas, not say that the problems are all going to be solved by one party or another, but it's going to be solved by all of us working together. So I hope you found value in this. Again, please reach out to me. You're always welcome to connect with me on social media as well. I'd love, again, to get your feedback, your thoughts, and have an awesome Monday, guys. Thanks for joining me. Bye-bye.